hope, to desire with expectation of fulfillment. House, a shelter. These are simple words, but to live them out, to be them, is not such a simple act. Neither was the journey that took 12 people from a Bible study on CSUN's campus to a now thriving and dynamic ministry, boldly proclaiming and demonstrating to both the churched and the unchurched that they can find hope, opportunity, purpose, and encouragement in Jesus Christ. This is their story. We are their legacy.
I was a student at Cal State Northridge studying engineering back in the day, and in the future, I was involved in leading praise and worship at a Bible study at Cal State Northridge, and I saw this young, tender thing come in the door. No, actually, I was praising God, worshiping God, and I met a young girl from Oakland, California. Her name was Andrea, and she was about 5 years younger than I am, so I was not interested in her at all. Keep moving. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Andrea and I became good friends because she loved basketball, the Lakers, and she could cook. And so as a result of our basketball, Laker, cooking fellowship, studying sessions, we developed more of a relationship over time. And at some point in time, it became clear that she likes me. So I had to decide, do I like her back? And actually, I liked her too. In math several times, passing and failing courses. I knew a little bit about math, and she was, I think, in a calculus course for business. Yes. And so I was able to help her somewhat with that. But in helping her, I helped myself to some other things along the way. Fellowship, food, and other things I won't mention here.
You're going to have to clean that up. So first of all, did you notice that he said he's 5 years older than me?
Yes.
How many years does it take to get a degree? 4.25. So technically, he should have never been at the school when I got there. That's the first piece of information we got to get straight. But according to him, God told him to flunk classes because his wife was coming.
His ways are not our ways.
And his thoughts clearly were not your thoughts. So we get there. I get to school, and he's leading praise and worship at the Bible study. He and Melvin McGuire. And I get there the first week of school. I'm 17, and I'm a Christian. I'm looking for a Bible study. So we go to Bible study the first week. They're doing meet and greet at the door with all the pretty chicks. Like they're blocking the door. The door's here. Melvin's on one side, Chuck's on the other. You cannot leave the Bible study unless you pass by these two dudes. And it's clear. It's clear. The dudes is like, what's up, dude? All the women we have conversation with, right? So I come through the door, and, Melvin said, what's up, Brown and Round? And I'm like, Brown and Round? He's like, yeah. I'm like, is that like a slant? And he's like, no, you have pretty brown eyes. I was like, oh, okay, thank you. And then he was like, hey, where you from? So Oakland. So we start chit-chatting. Now, he's 6'1", and he weighed 137 pounds.
Dripping wet.
With some jeans and a whole bunch of clothes on when I met him. He had a 27-inch waist. So Melvin's probably 5'10". He probably weighed about 145. So they look homeless, and they look like they needed food, right? And I could cook. So I invited them over to the house. That's how the relationship started. We became the greatest of friends because, yes, I could play basketball, so we played ball. I struggled in math. I understand money, but I hated math. And so he and Melvin both were my tutors. And I would share with them stories about my boyfriends, and they helped me through all that. They knew all my boyfriends.
You wanted to kill them, too.
Yeah, they wanted to kill my boyfriends. And then one fateful Good Friday.
It was a good Friday.
It was a good Friday. I think we talked all night, and we had that, who you like at the church? Well, I like so-and-so. What kind of woman you like? What kind of guy you like? And so we had that all night thing. My roommate was home, and we just talked and talked and talked. Why you don't like this person? Why you don't like this person? And one thing led to another, and he didn't have a car at the time, so he was on his bike.
Yes.
And I had a car. So he had put his bike on my balcony, and he went to get his bike, when he was leaving, it was about 6 o'clock. The sun had come up. It was like before my roommate wakes up and thinks that something happened here. You should probably go. So he goes to get his bike. He opens the sliding glass door. When he turns around, he kisses me out of nowhere.
It was impulse. It was spirit-led impulse.
It was spirit-led. It was spirit-led. The Holy Spirit told you to do that?
Well, it was impulse.
Oh, all right. So he kisses me, and to a woman that means something. To him, I didn't know I was part of the missionary dating scene that he and Melvin had been doing on an ongoing basis, right? So, why I joke about women, and when a man touches you or looks at you, when I joke when I'm preaching about women ready to go to David's bridal, is I'm done. I'm done in that moment. He's the one. Because I did like him, and he did have integrity. In fact, believe it or not, all the women wanted him. All of them. Why? You know
I
they
need
did.
names.
No, I'm not giving you no names. But they all did. When we finally went to talk to the pastor and said that we were going to be together, he was like, I'm going to have to tell all these chicks that think he's the one, that it's a no-go, that he's finally settled on you. And so, winsome smile, charming personality, faithfulness, consistency, and caring, tender heart. All the women wanted that. Other brothers had swag. It wasn't called swag back then. It was called something else. Cool. Other brothers had that stuff, but he was faithful and consistent and took care of business. So that's how we ended up together. And long story short, we ended up being engaged for 4 long years as he took back engagement after engagement. He'd ask and take it back. He gave me 18 reasons why he didn't want to marry me once. Or no, 18 reasons why.
You're killing my reputation right now.
18 reasons why he was not going to invite me to dinner and ask me to marry him. So get dressed up, baby. I want to take you out on Friday night. Got something real important I want to ask you. Beat your face, get your makeup done, wear your best dress, and take you out. I got something real, real serious I want to talk to you about. So we get there. Brother man goes in his pocket, comes out with a list.
Engineering paper.
Engineering paper, mind you, with grades and scales on it. And he says, I was thinking. And he walks down the list. He didn't get to 18. I got up to walk home from the restaurant and realized it was my car. So I ain't walking nowhere. And we drove home in silence.
Well, this story does have a happy ending since we are here at 25 years. So there is hope, which is why we call it Hope Fellowship.
I started with Hope's house from the gate, from the beginning. You know what I mean? Before the living room, we used to always have what we called the kitchen conversations, where we're all 4 corners of the kitchen and we're just talking about the word, or just talking, period. You know what I mean? So we was like, Pastor Dre was really like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Somebody had came up with the idea, well, let's start a Bible study on campus again. You know what I mean? So
I was going to CSUN at the time, and a good majority of my friends had started coming to this Bible study, and I had gotten invited, and I was like, okay, well, if it's like what I'm already experiencing, I don't want to be a part of that.
And ran into this Bible study that was going on, and it was totally different than what I grew up. I grew up in a Pentecostal church, B3, Hammond B3, drums, just a different type of worship. And I remember walking in for praise and worship, and it was somebody on the guitar, and I think it was Iman on the guitar, and somebody else was leading worship. And so it was a little bit of a culture shock to see black people having worship with a guitar. But I fell in love instantly.
I loved them the moment I saw them.
And instantly loved them. Like most people do when you meet them, you instantly connect with their heart. And so whatever they were a part of, I wanted to be a part of, and I wanted to support, because I saw the love they had for each other and for people. And sometimes you meet people who are in ministry and leadership who don't really love people. They love the title, or they love all that comes with that, but they don't really have the heart for the people. And so when you see that, you want to support that.
This is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been missing out on. And so I was so excited to experience what I thought there was, and I had no idea. The presence of God on the college campus was like, what is going on? And and it was totally contrary to what I was familiar with.
It was so pure, and I felt right at home. Other reason why I felt at home is because after Bible study, they fed us good. I mean, like fried chicken.
It was chicken and macaroni and cheese.
It was some good eating, and they had that every Tuesday.
It was just kind of instant family, so I didn't know what I was going to be doing with them, but I'm like, I need to come back here.
That kept me coming back, and then the word was good, and the worship, I just fell in love with that style of worship is what kept me coming back.
Pastor Dre and Chuck asked me if I would play the piano for them, and I said no. I said no, and I kind of thought that after that they'd be like, okay, thanks anyway, and then like that'd be the end of it. But they said, well, you know, even if you don't play for us, still come around. We want you to find a place for you to, you know, develop your talent and, you know, to be like a runway to take off and fly. I was like, interesting. So I told you no, and you're still offering me things. This is interesting. So I ended up playing for them. It turns out that they were really good, you know, speakers. They were good people. They were kind of good mentors. So really, rather than pay me, they just agreed to put the money that they would have paid me in a savings, and that at the end of the year we're going to go on a cruise together.
They were kind of like parents. They were definitely our spiritual parents, you know, because we were all away from home, you know, in this place. And if it wasn't for Hope Fellowship, I don't know where exactly I would have ended up.
But when you have someone who needs something and you can meet the need, you kind of become parent-ish, mom-ish, dad-ish. And then I think when there was less need, when we started to mature more, it became more like, okay, we're brothers and sisters. Okay, less needs, more maturity on our part, and less tending to those needs on their part. They become like peers. And at a certain point, the church had grown to the point where they really couldn't be as hands-on with just being with us as they wanted to. And they said, look, you guys need to go and sustain this yourself because we have to go do this other work. So I said, okay. And then they became free to be pastors. And we were on our own, rolling, just, you know, amongst ourselves with our own relationships. And we were standing on our own, whereas before we were just kind of leaning up against each other in a way.
I want to be a part of something in a meaningful way. And again, I felt so connected to them. And when you love someone, you want to support them. Whatever they're doing, you want to be a part of to help their dream come true. And some kind of way, it became our dream.
Things begin to happen. The Bible study begins to grow. The students are coming out of the woodwork. 100, 150 students. It's growing. And then the students say, we're coming to your house on Sunday. Have church. You've lost your mind.
I think the no was more out of the responsibility that it takes to pastor people. You know what I mean? It's one thing to be a minister, to give a word, and then go on with your life. You know what I mean? But when you begin to wear the hat of a pastor, then it's something different. You know what I mean? So I don't think the responsibility, the initial no was out of that's too much work. The work was welcome because Pastor Chuck and Pastor Dre were really already doing the work. The calls late at night, the going to pray for people, they were already doing it. But that's still functioning under one hat. And so I think that was more of, hold up with that.
By the way, that's a little ghetto to be having church. Now, mind you, we got ordained in our house over the story about churches starting in the house, but for some reason that's ghetto to us, and we're like, we're not doing that. So they asked week after week, and then finally they said this little key thing: why don't you pray about it like you always tell us to do? And we said,
Are you checking us on that?
oh yeah, okay, so now we're supposed to pray. Right, now you listening.
We wanted more. You know, it was kind of our demand. We wanted, we went from just a regular Bible study, you know, and being on campus and having all these great, you know, things happening on campus to, well, we don't have a church, you know, and we need something more than just Tuesdays, you know.
And we were just asking, can we have a service on Sunday? Instead of, for myself, driving back to LA to my home church, and some other people driving to their home church, can we just do this once a month on Sundays, just so that we're fed spiritually, we can eat, and we can get back to study for finals or whatnot.
It took a little bit of convincing.
So we pray, and I'm hoping to God he hears no, because I'm going to submit. I'm really going to submit.
Now you want to submit.
Yeah, now I'm going to submit, right? And so we pray separately.
We do. And
And
we
then-
like, what's your answer? What's your answer? You go first. You go first.
So the answer from both of us was yes.
And we both knew that. We like, oh gosh, we don't want to do this, but God is saying yes, and it was a clear no-brainer. And that's one thing I think about the consistency of the Spirit of God is that you just know it's the right thing to do, and you know you have all these reasons why not. It's ghetto, our house not big enough, we don't want to do all this stuff. It's like, yeah, just
And
do
who
it.
are we?
Who are we?
Who are we to do it?
Yeah. Who
Because
are
we're
we?
just Chuck and Dre.
Yeah.
But it was fun. We had
Yeah.
about 25 people show up. Our neighbors were real upset with us for Sunday morning, all the activity on the block.
We let them know.
I preached. He led worship. Mark Costin was on
You
keys.
know, it was just very small, intimate initially, Bible study with the Sunday morning kind of praise and worship added to it. And again, that's, where we continue to get fed, both naturally and spiritually, because Pastor Dre cooked up a storm.
I cooked macaroni and cheese and had some collard greens and some yams and cornbread and fried chicken and peach cobbler and lemon meringue pie all day Saturday. We had church on Sunday, and then we went to the dining room. We ate. It was all students. So we slept, various couches, got up, ate some more, played some games, goofed around, and that was that. And we thought, that was cool. Go back to doing Bible study next week.
Go to the church of your choice
Yes.
next week. And so they did, and they requested again, and we said, okay, maybe we'll do twice a month.
We just started having church with a few of us, and then I think a few of us invited a couple people, and those people invited other people, and those people invited other people.
And I think it just grew and developed from there.
As the story went from the springtime of 2003 to the fall or to the end of August, we've gone from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 services.
And little before we know it, the living room should probably only hold about 20 people, but we had 40, 50 people.
It was packed to the gills. Our house was packed to the gills by the time we got to
At that
August.
moment, we knew this was going to be larger than what the pastors ever planned, or they didn't even plan to have a church. But whatever God was doing, it was going to be larger than what we thought it could have been.
So, one particular was, what's the conference she puts on? Lamps conference.
Yes.
Pastor Bam calls us up with all the rest of the ministers. Now, mind you, all the ministers.
With Chuck and Dre, okay.
Yeah, we're just there, to learn. Calls us up in front of everybody, and she wants all these ministers and apostles and doctors and all these people to tell their story and just give some words of wisdom. And we standing there and we're like, what in God's creation are we doing up here? He says a few words about what we're doing, with the Bible study. And he shares a few things, and then he goes, and my wife's going to share the rest. So he hands me the mic, and I kid you not, I open my mouth, and literally I say, and we're going to be starting a church. And he looks at me.
What you talking about, Willis?
And I can feel his body tense up, but I promise you, I'm not sure where that came from.
We had outgrown the house, and now it's like, what do? Well, we look for a building,
So we started looking for a place to have worship. That, like you said, in and of itself is crazy. The pastor's working 2 full-time jobs, a baby on the way, and then a full-time ministry that wasn't in the plan, that's being grown and being developed beyond means, which I think gave a lot of us a little bit more ownership into what God was doing. It caused us, and I don't think you see that in typical churches, this ministry or Hope's House was never really a pastor-led ministry. It was really God ordained, and we all had our individual responsibilities. And if we didn't meet those individual responsibilities, balls were going to be dropped because there was, ownership. And so we even sat down and talked about what the finances were going to look like. How much can you tithe? How much can you commit to?
Again, we're still talking about college students, people who are dependent on financial aid and part-time jobs to sustain themselves. And that's who supported the ministry. And so it was a huge leap of faith to go from a free space to one that requires rent. And so that in itself was a huge victory, a huge and part of our portfolio, if you will, of faith, and believing God to be our provider, to support the work that he had already ordained.
And I truly believe, that he provides, when you're in his will and you're doing what he called you to do, the provision will be there.
I started getting infused in the ministry when they went on the initial retreat to talk about starting the church. They needed help with the kids. So while they had meetings and formulated ideas and casted vision and created core values, so I was there to help support so that they could do the business of thinking about what this church would look like and feel like and be like.
We find a place in Van Nuys that we're able to rent, Seventh-day Adventist Church, and Pastor Dre's initial expectations were that, we might fill up, a couple people here, a couple people there, especially that first initial service, it's just going to be families that are going to come.
And I pull up at this building and there's cars everywhere. Well, there's a Church of God in Christ Church next door, and I'm thinking to myself, we got to let them know that there's somebody here on Sunday. They can't park their cars here because I'm pretty sure it's overflow from next door. So thankfully, there were some ushers outside. I get out the car, they take the baby, and I come down the corridor. And the way the corridor was set, you walk down the corridor, and then you turn right to come into the building. But when you came into the building, there's a little bit of the building this way, but the bulk of the building went that way that you couldn't see. So when I turn down the hallway, the first thing I see is there's people sitting this way. Well, why are people sitting back here? Who did that? We need to train the ushers, because people shouldn't be sitting here. And so I come in, and when I walk in the door, I turn my head this way, and it is packed to the gill.
We packed out the church the first day that we were there. And, I kind of watched Pastor Dre as she got the realization that, okay, I need to increase my faith because God is obviously doing something way bigger than myself, way bigger than I could have ever imagined.
And so we got the mic and said, welcome
to Hope's house. And it was like a rush.
It was crazy. Standing ovation was crazy.
Now this is scary. Now this is real.
Anybody at the service could tell you, probably except the pastors, but that this was something bigger than what we anticipated. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But as things began to progress, when we were standing room only, and we had to go to 2 services in Van Nuys, and then 2 services were standing room only, and we knew we had to find a new. Those moments, you keep going. This is bigger than we think. Mm-hmm. This is more. This is more than we think.
Because it was never really about getting people to come so we could have the fastest growing church in the valley. It was more about creating a really safe space for people to pursue God in a very authentic way. And that's what caused it to grow so fast, because people are hungry for that.
We saw this building and it had a sign on it that said available, but part of the sign had blown over and it just said able, which was very, very cool.
And the funny thing is, we put an offer on this place maybe a year and a half before we actually got in. And we put our initial offer on this place, we were told that our offer was denied. Come to find out, when we reapplied for it years later, it's funny, God ordained things that I'm about to tear up a little bit, but we went from one office to another office. The second office we went to, the owners of that office were actually the owners of this building. And we told them about our story, how we applied. We sent in an offer for it. They said they never received the offer.
Mark had the files right there, so we go to the drawer. Mark pulls it out because he's very efficient. He pulls out the offer and he shows it to him. He goes, I never saw this. And he looks at the number. He goes, oh, I see why I never saw it. He goes, that's way less than we were asking. I said, yeah, I understand.
And so, I believe at the end of the day, it was really in God's timing. We needed to know that this was really God's plan and God's hand inside of it. And I think being able to meet those owners, Bob and Rhea, and knowing that they were owners of this building, it showed us that this is our home.
And I wake up one morning and I hear the Lord saying, make an offer on the building again. And I'm like, make an offer on the building again. Okay, what does that mean? And I sit down, and he goes, here. Brrr. And he gives me this offer for a lease to buy option. And literally, it's just this whole strategy. And he says, pitch it to the owners. Okay, so I call up Mark and tell Mark. And Mark's like, okay. So he calls up the owners. We make an appointment. Meet with the one we've been dealing with that owns our other building that we're leasing from. Just got one problem. He said, the numbers are too low. And I said, the numbers I have. He says, they're too low. He says, I want you to have the building. He says, I do. Everything in there, I want you to do in our building. And I will pitch this for you, but you got to come up just a little bit. And I said, okay. And he says, but I will, whatever you give me, I'll pitch for you because I believe in you and I believe in that package, and I will take it to the rest of my team. So me and Mark leave. We go back. We pray. I pray. God says, that is the number. So I go back to him, to Mark. I said, Mark, this is what the Lord says. Mark says, then let's go have a meeting. We have a meeting, and I tell him, sir, if I do anything else, we will default, and this deal will fall through. This is what we have. He says, I will take this, and I will pitch it. We go, we do our 20th renewing of our vows. We go to the Bahamas. We take our friends with us. We have a great time. We come back. I'm driving down the street. Mark Henderson calls me. He says, what are you doing? I said, I'm driving down the street. He goes, where are you? I said, I'm pulling in my driveway. He goes, let me know when you stop. I go, okay, I'm a pastor. That's a bad call. You know what I mean? Because that means he's got news for me that is going to stop me in my tracks. So I pull up in my driveway. He's outside. Shantae is over. The kids are riding, playing and goofing around. So I pull up and I sit there and I'm tense. And I'm like, okay, I'm parked, Mark. And he says, you can pick up keys to the building. And I thought my heart was going to fall out of my chest. I'm like, what? So about a month or so later, we're having a meeting. And I noticed that my podium that my brother Rob built from scratch was missing. Kenny Lattimore decided he was going to toss it and get us a brand new plexiglass one for our come-upness, right? And he threw it in the garbage can. So I was really upset about that because that thing was near and dear to my heart because it was our first podium and my brother had built it from scratch, right? And so, okay, it's gone, that's that. Fast forward, we decided we're going to take the team over to the building to a walkthrough. We're walking around. It's an empty warehouse with nothing but cabinetry all around. And so Essay opens up a cabinet and she goes, hey, look, they have a podium. We could have church right now in the middle of the warehouse. And so she closes it back up. She walks away. So I'm curious. So I walk over and I open it up and I look and I scream and I jump back. And I said, that's our podium. So I start screaming for him and Robert to come over. And so I said, guys, come here. I said, our podium's in here. And they got this look. So they come over. And when Robert gets over there, he jumps back because they all know it's been thrown away. God took something that was thrown away, even while we were at the old church, our callings, our ministry, and he threw it into darkness. They threw it in the trash can, much like that podium had been thrown in the trash can and considered to be worthless and without value. Tossed in the garbage can with banana peels, apple peels, trash, dirty diapers, and whatever else goes in the trash. The lid, because the trash cans outside, the big ones, they put the lid down on that thing, right? And in total darkness, that podium sat there waiting to be tossed in the heap of other trash. But somebody who doesn't even know what they're doing sees value in it, takes it out of darkness, takes it out of the trash, and puts it in a place in the future, not knowing that at some point in time, the owners of that calling, the owners of that ministry are going to meet up with that podium in the future. They don't know it. The podium doesn't know it. He doesn't even know what he's doing. And on that moment, on that day, the divine purpose of God is met up and we encounter his purpose being met out in all of our lives. And so off we go. We get keys. We go to church Sunday morning and nobody knows this, right? So we preach. We rented a U-Haul truck. We don't tell anybody but a few people. And at the end of preaching, we get up and we tell them, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who can stay after church, we need you to roll your sleeves up because we're moving from here because we have a building on the other side of town and today is moving day and people once again go crazy. So we move.
it felt like we won the lottery. It felt like like each of us, you get a car, you get a car. That's the feeling that we had as, people who had been toiling. Doing 2 services every week, setting up and tearing down every week. It was like us walking into the promised land, right? But it wasn't all milk and honey. It was not all milk and honey. We had a warehouse.
It's funny, the place that we're in now, somebody's sitting right now, I don't know where you are, but somebody's sitting where me and Pastor Dre used to play basketball. Literally, I dunked on her, she dunked on me. I'll leave it at that. But there were cars where the chairs are right now. This was a storage facility.
There was no carpet. It was freezing or hot depending on the day or the season. There was furniture everywhere, office furniture. It was dusty. It was just a bunch of office spaces that needed a lot of work. So it was just at that point when we first walked in here, it was just a building. That's it.
We looked around and some of us were like, I don't really see where this is better than where we were.
But we were thankful for what we did have. We were so thankful that God had saw fit and made a way that we could be in this space.
I think that when it comes down to it, the worship and the word met the need, and it didn't matter that I needed an extra sweater, or in the summer I needed an ice cold bottle of water. It was that I need to get something so I can change, so my week will be different.
So we get started on putting things together slowly but surely.
We got to the point where we did have to do the renovations without us being here just for safety reasons. So initially, we went to CSUN. We didn't think it was going to actually take as long as it did. So, we'll pop over here for a couple of weeks and then, we'll come right back. Well, that wasn't the case.
We started construction on that list that the city gave us, and we were moving through it. And then April of 2009,
What's that called? Recession? Is that
the recession
yeah.
took over. We ran out of money, and my administrator called and said, I have 4 things. I have payroll, I have construction, I have the rent, and I have ministry stuff to pay. Those 4. He said, I can do a couple of them. That's how much money I have. I said, don't pay me and Pastor Chuck. Stop construction, pay our staff, right, and pay the mortgage. I'll be home in 3 days, and we'll figure it out. We stopped construction in April of 2009 and started trying to fundraise.
I just remember Pastor Dre in the prayer room on her face often praying for the money to come in, to continue construction, and that construction would, go as planned, because we had so many plans, you never knew, what the deal was. So, we had to move back out. So we moved back out.
For a small period of time, we had to meet at the movie theater. And that's where people were like, oh yeah, this is, y'all own one on this one.
When I tell you that we were sitting in a movie theater and we could hear zombies on one side, we could hear wars on the other side, but we were giving praises in the center, you know what I mean?
But I didn't care. I was like, this is kind of cool. Who has church in the movie theater? We can go see a movie after. It was convenient to me, but it was still hard. But I feel like I don't think life is supposed to be easy and comfortable all the time.
I was going to pitch to the owners, please let us out of this deal. So sorry. But we bit off more than we can chew, and I don't want to default on you. So far, we've paid rent, we're current, but I don't want to default on you, and I don't have enough to finish construction. They were telling me at the time it was another $280,000, and we had only managed to raise, in a year's time, $60,000. We're young people and artists, The money wasn't huge, and I had quit my job, so it wasn't like I could just take my salary, you know what I mean, which is what we had been accustomed to doing before. And so I sat down, I did a PowerPoint, I used my MBA one more time with the owners, put a whole PowerPoint together, got them a little red thing, and I sat and I explained, this is what we said. But if you remember, and they're business people, we got this building in September of 2008, the day the government declares that the recession started. It's just impossible for us to do everything. And so I would like for you to let us out of this deal. And they looked at each other and they said, can you take us around again? and tell us what you wanted to do with this building. I'm explaining the whole 9 yards, and they're nodding, and we're walking and talking, and it's all, it's all half done because we stopped construction. So we come back up to the conference room, and they say, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at my people, and they said, we believe you're supposed to do that. And I go, I believe I'm supposed to do it too. Thank you for the agreement. Really appreciate it. And they said, and we believe in you. They always make sure they tell me they believe in me. I said, thank you. I really appreciate that. And they said, what if we write you a check right now for $280,000? Excuse me? I'm sorry. So the people I'm with kicked me under the table, you know what I mean? And I said, okay, I don't understand. And they say, we believe you guys are supposed to be in this building. We don't want anybody else to have the building. So if we give you a check today for $280,000, will you stay and will you honor the deal? And will you do what we believe God wants you to do? They're Jewish. I forgot to tell you that. They're not Christian. They're Jewish. So they don't actually believe in Jesus, but they're supporting the Christian cause. So I said, yeah. I said, I have to talk to my husband. So I call him, and he was like, heck yeah. I meet with the board. They say, heck yeah. And so that's the first check. 7 days later, some friends call. They say, we want to come by and talk to you. So everybody's been leaving. It's been tough. So we're thinking they're probably going to leave and go to another church too. They come in, they say, we have a word for you guys. They're not, we have a word for you people. They're just not. And so we say, okay. And they said, the Lord said he's pleased. You've been through hell and back, but you haven't talked about his people. You haven't retaliated. People have doubted you, but you stayed the course. And God said to tell you he's pleased with what you're doing. And he said, feed his sheep and build his church. Thank you. Tears just stream. That's worth $1 million to me. And then they slide an envelope over, and they said, and the Lord said to give you this. I said, okay. So he picks it up, and it's a cashier's check for $250,000. So the next morning we go to the mailbox, and an entertainer friend who came here 3 times in life, but said the message has blessed her, tithed on a bonus check and sent a $30,000 check. And so $500,000 in 8 days in our hand.
A whole year, 60,000
on our own.
And then
8 days.
Growing versus being pushed by the wind of the Holy Spirit, I'd say. So when people said, we believe in you, as she said, it wasn't even the money. It was that people said, we see what you're doing. We recognize you're people of integrity. You don't have an ill will or ill motive toward anybody, and you're doing the best that you can with what you got, and we support you. We were like, thank you very much. By the way, the check was gravy.
It's amazing when you look back and you see how God put a puzzle together, you know what I mean? And when you yield it don't always look right, you know what I mean? It don't always look like it's going to work. But if you're listening to God and you're obedient to God, it's going to work. You're going to have his results, so.
I think one of the exciting things about this season, these last 10 years, it's been an opportunity to train people, leaders, and that sounds so regimented. It sounds like the armed forces, but reproducing that love, the truth. I mean, the love of God, that it'll continue on, that it will continue to be a respite for people to come in whatever walk of life, be it someone who's all the way down on their luck or somebody who's flying high, that just needs to stay connected to the love of God, to the simplicity of the love of God. So hopefully it's the same. We're just bigger, but it's the same.
I see, the community getting more involved. I see us affecting the lives of the people around us. I see people coming back, grandchildren coming back to thank the pastors, for saving their mother or helping their mother get through a tough time. So I see a lot more testimonies, more families coming in, more broken people being healed here. It's only going to grow exponentially from here. This is literally 10 years in. It's still just the beginning.
There hasn't been one setback yet that has stopped the thing from happening. You know, it's maybe slowed them down. It's maybe caused people to get on their face in the prayer room and come out looking like Sophia from The Color Purple. But it's still going.
I feel like it can't just be Granada Hills. We need this in Inglewood. We need this in Lancaster.
I see it being modeled in Sacramento or in Nevada, just kind of being taken all over the world.
It's going to be a place where God can trust that His presence is going to be there, be a safe place for people to get whole. This is going to be the place where you can find hope.
So there's lots to be done. We will plant churches. There will be a church in the Antelope Valley. There will be a church in the IE. There will be a church in Los Angeles proper. Those three we are very much aware of. And we're training leaders right now to pastor those churches. We're training praise and worship leaders right now to go and do worship. We're training deacons and elders and administrators to go and do that, and youth people. And so that'll happen sooner than some people think, because there's some stuff already out there on the horizon.
So whether we become a mega church is not the issue. Whether we plant thousands of churches is not the issue. Whether we're the biggest, baddest, fastest growing church, not the issue. If we're a healthy church, if we're healthy, then we'll bring forth life. That means we have to know who's among us, who's laboring among us. We have to have a care and a heart for them moving forward in their gift and calling. And as opposed to just seeing them as a number, and as long as you're paying your tithes and offerings and not causing trouble in church, you're good. That's not the point. The point is that you're flourishing in what God's called you to flourishing. That means we don't always resource you, but we will push you and encourage you and provide an environment for you to feel like, I can do more.
Yeah.
And that's what we really want to do.
For the two of us, 10 years from now, Lauren is a junior in college. Sydney is a freshman in college. We are empty nesters. 10 years from now.
Lord, give me strength.
Period. That's all.